I'd like to welcome everyone to the Clarkston Independence District Library Board of Trustees meeting for July 10th, 2023. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:32. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Jan Gaffney, absent. Allison McFadden Kiesling?
Here.
Nancy Moon?
Here.
Alan Panter?
Here.
Marilyn Pomeroy?
Here.
Maggie Sands?
Here.
Chris Schell, absent. Julie Meredith here.
Okay, I'll accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Call to the public.
I'm Jim Gerlin with Friends of the Library. Just activities for the past month and this month on our side. Funds available. It's $39,705.23. Upcoming activities for us are the children's book sale, July 24th, outside here on the other side of the library, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then our fall book sale is still on schedule for September 20th through the 23rd. That's it.
Let's keep you busy all summer.
Yeah.
Call to the public is closed. I'll accept a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved. Sorry.
Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda as presented. Anyone have a question about any of the items? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Okay, library statistics.
The one statistic that Mr. Bowman wanted me to point out to you is that for total downloads this month exceeded 10,000, and he believes that's the first time that we have done that. So he was very excited about that. We are seeing the numbers growing, and they are back close to the 2019 numbers, and in some places have exceeded our 2019 numbers. So we're very excited about usage of the library this past month. Any questions about any of the statistics?
All right, the library director's report.
With the completion of the audit, we shift gears to really dig into completing the 2024 budget, which comes to the board for approval at the September 11th meeting. I've met with each department head to discuss their priorities and projects for the coming year. In the next few weeks, I will meet with the library board's staffing committee and capital improvement plan committee, and we will hold the board's budget workshop to review the draft of the budget in late August. We've come to the end of the contracts for both of our contracted accountant and the auditor, so we are due for an RFP process for each of those services. We will be posting the RFPs on the following timelines. The accountant, the contract is for January 1, 2023 to 2024. Sorry about that. To 2026, and we'll post the RFP July 11th through the 21st. We'll review the proposals July 24th through August 11th, and we'll make a recommendation to the board August 14th. And then for the auditor, same timeline in terms of the contract, so 2024 to 2026. We'll post the RFP September 12th through the 22nd. We'll review the proposals the 25th through October 13th, and then we'll recommend to the board on October 16th. We've received an updated draft of our employee policy manual from our labor attorney. The committee working on the manual will be meeting to discuss the update, and we'll have the attorney zoom in for a portion of that meeting in order to answer any questions and clarify details. And then the next step in that process is to review the draft with the department heads. And then last but not least, the final course in the Library of Michigan's financial cohort that I've been taking is writing financial policies. This session will be complete on July 24th, and in August, each student takes on a project to write or update one of their financial policies, and I will be working on that. So,
Timing is good.
yep, timing is good.
Okay. Very good. On to regular business. Number 1 is the 2022 audit.
It's pretty funny hearing that excitement out
Yeah,
there.
it's all the puppets we're listening to while we hold our meeting.
The puppets, yes.
Okay, everyone's ready for me, correct?
We are, Ian.
Okay, cool. So if you were here last year, it'll probably be a very similar audit presentation, just kind of go over what the opinion was, as well as just the changes between 2022 and 2021. And if you have any questions throughout the audit or us going through it, just feel free to interrupt me, and I'm more than happy to answer anything. So you all have a physical copy of the audit report, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If you open up to page 1, it's a few pages in, but it is labeled page 1. It is the independent auditor's report. The first section, second paragraph, this is where we state what our opinion is. I won't read it to you, but it's the wording for an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, the best opinion the library could receive. So in essence, what we're stating here is that you passed the audit. There's nothing better you could have done to get a better opinion, I suppose. So kudos to everybody who's involved with it and who is involved in the day-to-day management of the library. So a couple more pages down, page 4, this is the management discussion and analysis section. If you look at the financial highlights, it just kind of goes over where the library stood as of December 31st, 2022. The first bullet point, there's a caveat to this. The first 2 bullet points are on a different basis of accounting than the second 2 bullet points, so there will be some variance. The first 2 will include any long-term items like capital assets, the library building, or any long-term debt if you had any. And the second 2 bullet points will not include that. So that's the reason for the variances. First bullet point, the assets of the library exceeded its liabilities and deferred inflows by about 4 million or 4.1 million, meaning you have excess assets over liabilities. I guess I kind of said that already, but nevertheless. Of that amount, 2.4 million is unrestricted, meaning it's available for anything that the library would like to use it for. The difference between the 4 million and the 2.4 million is mainly made up of your capital assets, because it's not as easy to sell a library building or something like that. It's not as readily available to be spent. So that's the difference between the 2 of them. Second bullet point, you received about 2.3 million in revenues and spent 2.2 million in expenses for various items. And so you had an increase, meaning excess revenues over expenses of 129,000, a little bit over that. So overall, an increase in your net position for the year. Decent. Your general fund, third bullet point, has a fund balance or increased its fund balance by $85,000 during the year. So you have an ending fund balance of 2.4 million. So a pretty sizable fund balance. And if you go down to the next bullet point, the unassigned fund balance, meaning it's similar to unrestricted net position, it's fund balance that can be used for anything. You have about 429,000 of it, and that equates to 19.1% of your general fund expenditures. So if you had cash flow issues or you didn't receive property taxes, you'd survive for about 19% of the year on your unassigned fund balance. Of course, there is a large difference between your total fund balance and unassigned fund balance, so you could take some of the other fund balance that's assigned for capital improvements, and you could use that if need be. Any questions on that so far?
So we're in a solid position.
Say that again?
So we are in a solid financial position.
Yeah, correct. If you took your total fund balance as a basis of your expenditures, you would survive over a year. So yeah, you're doing fine financially. A couple more pages down to page 6. This is your statement of net position. It shows your assets and any liabilities or deferred inflows that the library has. So you can see that cash makes up a fair amount of your assets, and then your receivables as well, which is mainly your property taxes that you will receive in the next year. You're due from other governments. There weren't too many changes between 2021 and 2022 2022, your cash increased a fair amount, which is largely due to you having excess revenues over expenses, as well as the increase in your deferred inflows that led to an increase in your cash. And then similarly, you had a fairly sizable increase in your deferred inflows, which are taxes that will be received next year, will be used next year for the library. And all of that boils down into your total net position of 4.1 million. The next page down is your statement of changes in that position. It shows your revenues and expenses. Again, not too many changes other than your charges for services had a fairly sizable increase from 13K to 69K. And I believe that is mainly due to COVID not being as much of an issue last year, or this year, as it was last year. Where the library was closed for a fair amount of 2021, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So those were the main changes between the 2 years. If you go to page 11 through page 16, I believe, these are your basic financial statements. Page 11 and 12 are the same statement as what we just went over, except in a different format. And it's only for 2022. Page 13 is your balance sheet or your assets and liabilities for your general fund. And then your page 15 is a little bit more detailed of your revenues and expenses. So if you have any questions over that, feel free to ask, but it kind of just goes over what your general fund is. There's not too much else I had for you. It's pretty similar to last year in terms of how the audit report is laid out. Were there any other questions or comments or?
No, it's very thorough and easy to understand. Thank you. It's very
Is
clear.
he able
Thank
to
you.
hear us? Are you even able to hear us, Ian?
I can hear, there's some background noise that is kind of blurring you.
Yes. We know there's some background noise.
We're having a program.
There's a
just
program outside.
the door.
Okay. So is everyone all set or any?
Ian, I have a few questions. I was waiting for you to be done, and I wanted to ask you a few things about this.
For sure.
Can you explain in the governance letter the material weakness that you're communicating?
So the reason behind that is last year, 2020, 2021 and 2022, and it's possible it was also 2020 as well, we made a material audit adjustment from when we were given the books, and from our standpoint, that our hands are kind of tied onto whether there's a finding or not. If we make material audit adjustments from what your books were previously stated, when we go through the audit, our firm's opinion is that there needs to be some finding that states we changed your books by a material amount after they were given to us. And it's not a point of the library's inadequacy. It's you could argue that's what it's saying. That's not what I think it's saying. It's mainly that we changed your books and we're trying to get it so that the library understands what changes need to be made in the future.
Okay. Can you?
And that's, yeah.
So the material adjustment that was made, I understand that is related to the property tax receivable and the related deferred inflow. What was the amount of the adjustment? Do you know what the amount of that adjustment was?
I believe it was 70 to 80K, somewhere in between there.
Okay, so definitely material. All right. But the rest of the finding basically states that no one at the library has ski. And that's kind of troubling to me. And whether or not it's...
Do you know where... I read through it, and I didn't think it was saying that the library didn't have ski. I tried to make it so that it sounded like the library...
Yeah. So as soon as you start going into, as is the case in many small and medium-sized government, our library has historically relied on its independent external auditor to assist in preparation of the financial statements. That's the whole thing about, preparation of financial statements and basically saying we don't have ski. So I guess, it's all over and done with, and I was provided with a draft just before you guys finished the audit, so, this was something that we talked about before, but I would just suggest, in the future to kind of tailor the comment to the actual, I get the part about the material adjustment, I get that. But the rest of it about, outsourcing the, preparation of financial statements, rather than incurring a cost, because our director has been making significant efforts to educate herself on the financial management cohort. So there's that.
I completely agree with you. The director, as well as all of you, have the CID to be able to prepare and take responsibility for the financial statements.
Right.
I will talk with my boss and make sure he's fine with adjusting the wording. I think what we generally do is, if there's a material audit adjustment, we take the opinion that we are changing your books enough to where it is us creating the financial statements in some way, shape, or form. I will confirm that.
Okay.
And suggest that we switch the wording.
Okay. I don't think that we're in a position where we can really change things. I mean, the audit has already been submitted to the state. You've already printed it. I mean, I think it's...
Yeah, for sure. This is in relation to next year.
Yeah. And if we need to discuss it further, we can, but, okay, so that's fine. And I guess the other question I have is, I have a couple of other questions. Now that I see the bound report, I see that the governance letter is included with the bound copy, and it was also included when I looked on the state's website today for the report. This isn't a gas audit, so we don't have to do that. I just wanted to point that out. It's unnecessary to include this in the bound copy, and my concern about that is the material weakness. So that's part of what's being communicated. Another question. Last year, there was a footnote disclosure that discussed lease commitments, and this year we have GASB 87 that was effective. I don't see anything in the statement's opinion or government's letter regarding GASB 87.
Yeah, we deemed it immaterial. I believe the lease was down to 5 to 10K.
Okay.
Somewhere into there, and so we just stopped reporting on it because we deemed it immaterial, and it's a fair amount of time to try to implement GASB 87 for a 5K lease.
So it wasn't a past adjustment, it was below your trivial threshold?
It was probably a past adjustment if it was 5 to 10K.
Yeah.
It wasn't trivial.
Okay, so the past adjustment is not in the letter?
Say that again?
Past adjustment is not in the audit letter, the governance letter?
I believe we stated...
Require us to accumulate all known and likely misstatements identified during the audit. Other than those that are clearly trivial, management has corrected all such misstatements. So that says that there's no past adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, that may have been a mistake on my part.
Yeah.
I apologize for that.
Okay. Next question is, I want to start with Julie, though. Julie, what's our policy for compensated absences? In other words, the vacation sick time that people accumulate, do they get paid for that when they separate from the library?
Yep, so we have a sort of use it or lose it program.
Okay.
So they use it at the end of each year, by the end of the year. When they separate from us, we do pay them out. We prorate it as they leave. So you get prorated on the front end and make sure that when you start, you have some vacation to start. And then on the end, we prorate it again and pay you out for anything that you would be entitled to for the amount of time that you stayed that last year.
Okay.
So it does not carry over from year to year?
It does not. The only thing that carries
Okay.
over from one year to the next is up to 24 hours of sick time.
Okay. All right. So
And we do that intentionally because what we were finding was that people were using their vacation time as a sort of a retirement plan, and it was unfortunate that we were getting people who were very, very burned out, and so we had to put a mechanism in place in order to encourage people to take their time and make sure that we weren't getting burned out employees.
Okay.
So.
All right, very good. Ian, in light of the answer that I just received, the note disclosure on page 20 says, Sick pay and vacation pay is accrued when incurred in the government-wide proprietary and fiduciary funds, which we don't have any proprietary or fiduciary funds, financial statements. So I would just point that out and maybe clean that up a little bit next year. Okay, last question. Capitalized books. So we capitalize our collection every year, so what we purchase. I see that there's a difference between what was capitalized and what was expended. Is that right? So it was $113,000 capitalized.
I'm sorry, can you say that again once more?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the amount that was capitalized for the library books and materials on page 25. And that's
Okay.
$113,000. And then when I look at the fund level financial statements on page 15, I see that $228,000 was expended.
The difference is the electronic books, so, like your, maybe it's not Hoopla, but it might be some other subscription-based
Okay.
Overdrive.
library collection book, that's the difference between the two. We don't capitalize the electronic subscription part of it, because it's generally only 1 year long.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So we'll catch that with GASB 96 next year.
Yeah, that'll go along with GASB 96 next year, whenever, I still have to learn about that.
Yeah.
I know it's coming along, but it's not here yet.
Yeah. Okay, those are all my questions. Thanks, Ian.
Can we return to your first question for just one clarification? I don't think I'm familiar, no, and I'm not familiar with what makes up our material audit
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Can someone explain it to me?
So what they're saying is that they had an adjustment to the property taxes. So on the fund level statements, and I'll show you exactly where. Page 13, we've got due from other governmental units, $2 million. And then below that, you've got taxes levied for subsequent period. What that's saying is that we levy our tax in December, and we're levying the tax for use in the current fiscal year. So as of December 31st, it's deferred.
Because it's a rear.
And the difference is collections. So what you collect in December, you take that off the receivable, but you don't take it off the deferral. So you've got
Okay.
cash and receivable. So that's what it is. And what he's saying is that was off by $70,000 or $80,000 when it was submitted to them. So they needed to make an adjustment for that
Okay.
$70,000 or $80,000. And that's a material adjustment, even though it didn't change our fund balance.
Okay.
So because it would have been, well, very likely would have been maybe.
Well, so what
Just
would be the reason the number would have been off by that significant of an amount? Estimate.
I don't know the answer to that. That's a question more for Julie or for
Ian.
Nicole or.
Is estimated?
It was-
Because
well,
it's
it
an
was-
estimated number?
It was the way that it was calculated out. Our accountant does the calculation of it. And
Okay.
when she went to calculate it at the end of the year, because it takes into account all of the amounts that come in from Oakland County over the course of the year. Remember, our QuickBooks imploded in November, and so there was
Oh,
a period of
right.
time she kind of let it ride until we got to the end of the year. And when she calculated it, she calculated it out backwards instead of calculating it forward. And
Okay. So we think it's a one-time issue?
yes,
Okay.
we think it's the way she did it in response to QuickBooks. And when Ian got the paperwork, he's like, this isn't the way she should have done it, and he's not
Okay.
wrong.
Okay.
And so he recalculated it, and the number was off.
Thank you.
So,
And we thank you.
yes.
I've also given Julie my work paper as to how I did it, so that whoever does it next year, she can double check it, I suppose. And it also works in line with the total property tax revenue, so that revenues are correct as well as anything on the balance sheet.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions?
That was interesting. Thanks.
If we have no other questions for Ian, I will accept a motion.
I move to accept the audit as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the library audit as presented. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. We thank you, Ian. That was very clear to do things
Thank you. Yep.
at some distance.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll make sure that we get all those issues, Alan, cleaned up next year.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yep. All right. If there's nothing else, is it fine if I drop off?
Yep.
It is fine.
It is.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Ian.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks.
You too. Number 2 on our item is review of updated internal controls.
Okay. So each year, the audit is an opportunity to review current procedures, consider best practices, and implement improvements. During the pandemic, many policies and procedures were turned upside down due to remote work and companies transitioning to online methods for executing a variety of tasks. While some procedures reverted back to traditional methods of execution, others remained in their new form. During last year's audit, we began a process of reviewing and updating our financial systems. This is a report of what has been done so far. Additional projects in the works include an update to the employee policy manual and a complete review and update of the financial policies. So just within your packet, the updates that we've done, as was mentioned during the audit, I've been in the the Library of Michigan's Public Library Financial Management Cohort. So that's a year-long financial management training program that I've been in, budgeting, government accounting, internal controls, purchasing, payroll, administration, and writing financial policies. We went back through our segregation of administrative tasks, and we reviewed those and tightened them up. And basically during the pandemic, it became a little bit more of how do we get these things done? And there had been some bleed between the segregation of tasks, and we tightened all of that back up again. We added some additional checkpoints of accountability, and we're adding those to the workflows. So opportunities to assure tasks are being completed in a timely manner, such as adding bank reconciliation documentation to board packets. You'll start seeing that next month, and provide deadlines and verification. Additional verification of accuracy has been added to workflows. So what you're going to see in your packet, we created a checklist that's part of the workflows that clarifies the expectations for approval. So essentially, when anything goes through the process in our administrative office, payroll, accounts payable, you can see from these checklists exactly who's responsible for each task, and we sign off on it. Now, it indicates who the normal person is that does those various tasks. But let's say somebody's out of town or is sick, and I need somebody else to do that task. This will document who does that task. So if somebody were out for some period of time with a disability or a surgery or something along those lines, we would be able to document who did that task in their absence instead of saying, well, so-and-so filled in, or instead of me, for example, filling in a task that's not my place, it would be very clear that I need to say, nope, somebody else needs to do this, because it would be bleeding over into something that is not a segregation of tasks for me.
Julie, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
I know that as I'm looking at the segregation of financial duties, that you're very happy with the 2 administrative assistant system we have here. If someone was to leave that job, would you stick with this same system in the future? Because I do notice that it's quite obviously there's delineation of duties for you as the director, and then they have a separation which makes sense and works right now.
Yep.
Is that a division of duties that you would think should be permanent as is, so you're putting in the policies that way?
It is, yep, I really do.
So you would try and rehire for the same situation should
We
either
actually
of
had
them-
that happen during COVID. When we first segregated the tasks in this way, Erica was the person who was doing the financial work, and Debbie was doing the accounts payable, and Erica took another position. And when we posted it, we posted that half of the job, and the job descriptions are actually written that way.
Okay.
And we posted for it, and we brought in Nicole, and Nicole is now doing those tasks.
Okay.
And so she knew what she was signing on for. She knew what the workflow was going to be like. She knew what the schedule was going to be like.
Okay.
And she understood that she would be cross-trained, and that the 2 of them, to the best of our ability, they're not out of town at the same time or taking time off at the same time. And so we
Right.
worked that
Okay.
out, and it's worked out really well for us. And they actually like it because they get to kind of work together.
Yeah.
And we've started meeting once a month. We were doing that before, and then during COVID, it was more of a let's get it done kind of thing, but we're back to meeting once a month, and that gives us a chance to kind of go over the schedule, who's going to be gone when, and how are we going to cover this, and make sure that all of those tasks are being done and appropriately segregated.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we did discussion, didn't we? So as to make sure that we were segregating the tasks to make sure we would not have a chance of financial mismanagement.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And then the administrative staff, as I said, meets monthly to check on scheduling and workflows and concerns. And then we also had the administrative staff do a presentation to the staff about the purpose and importance of internal controls, financial accountability, documentation and records retention, so they understand. And that creates that that culture of transparency, and that what we're looking for is to assure that we're catching any inadvertent mistakes, and that there are no holes in our system anywhere, so that we can make sure that things are accurate and clean. So, any questions about any of that?
No, we're adapting and growing.
Yes.
I didn't really spend a lot of time looking at the segregation of duties, but I don't see a control here for, so the bank statements are being reconciled by the outside accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody reviewing those bank statements?
That's what we're adding. That's the
Or
part that
those
we need
bank
to do. Yep.
reconciliations?
So the reconciliations will come in, and we're adding a workflow by which they will be checked, and we're looking at putting them in the board packet so that you will be seeing them as well, so that
Okay.
there will be an accountability there
Okay.
that was not there previously.
I'm not sure it's 100% necessary to give them to us, but if somebody's reviewing them,
Mhm.
that's a key control that I would,
Okay.
definitely
Yep.
think. The other one is, again, this contracted accountant, she's preparing financial statements and quarterly reports.
Mm-hmm.
A review of those,
Yep.
an internal review is probably something, I'm sure you're doing it.
Actually, the one
just-
for the second quarter just came in. It came in on Saturday, and I was going to put it in the board packet, but I wanted to review it. There were some things in there that I was questioning the way that that they were calculated out. I think she missed a budget adjustment that we had made, so I didn't want to put that one in until we got that corrected.
Right,
So,
right.
so you'll see that one next month in
But
the board packet.
just to have those two tasks
Mhm.
maybe on the
Yep.
list explicitly is, because, I think those are big
Absolutely.
things, and you're already doing them.
Yep.
Bridget?
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on updating our internal controls?
Do you think the course you've been taking at the State of Michigan Library has been helpful in this process?
Actually, it really was. The timing was sort of serendipitous about how
Mhm.
it came. I actually started it in September, and then we started to have the QuickBooks issue. And I literally was doing government accounting in December when the whole thing was, so that was very, very helpful. And one of the things that I discovered is that, as Alan pointed out, I've been a library director for a lot of years, and I know how to do budgeting and all that sort of thing, but I didn't have the language as cleanly and tightly in my head as I needed to.
Mhm.
I felt like that really cleaned up some of my understanding of some of the things that I needed to know that were going on. And it's interesting because there are a couple of other library directors in this cohort that have been directors, not as long as I have, but I've known them for several years, and we were talking about it, and they were saying the same thing. It's like, I always knew what I was doing, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
There's a name for it.
There's a name for it, and I wasn't using the right jargon. I know a lot of library jargon, but I didn't know the budgeting jargon. I didn't know the government accounting jargon as well, and
Great.
And it has really strengthened it. And the lovely thing about it is that it is actually being taught by the University of Georgia, so it's a college level course, and it's very thorough in what they're teaching us. But it ended up not costing the library anything because it was paid for by LSTA funding through the Library of Michigan. So it's been just a really great use of my time.
Timely.
Very timely, very, very timely. And one of those things that when it came in, I thought, I really want to do this, but I kept saying, well, maybe this is really for the directors that are on there. Like, nope, I'm going to sign up for it and see what happens. And my explanation for why I wanted to take it in the application, the folks at the Library of Michigan said they thought that was a great reason. It was because I wanted to go back and revisit a lot of best practices and look at some of the things that we had inherited from the township that sort of had evolved over time and maybe had bled into not as tight as they should be. And it's really giving us an opportunity to tighten up a lot of those things and make sure that
Have
we're being as
clarity.
transparent and clear as possible.
Terrific. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Julie, we've got this accounts payable checklist. Is there going to be one of these filled out for every check run?
Yes, you will be, yep, we just created it. You will see it on the next check run that you come in to sign checks for, and you'll see exactly who's done which piece. And one of the things that we wanted to do is that make sure that the people who are signing the checks understand what it is that your expectation is when you say, and you'll be able to see who has checked the other pieces ahead of you. So it gives you that confidence to know that you don't have to look at every invoice number. Debbie has looked at every invoice number. I have looked at every invoice number. It also clarifies to you who's going to be checking other pieces down the way. So before the checks get sent, Nicole actually goes through and checks all the addresses, double checks the amounts, makes sure that those pieces before they go out have that one last checkpoint. And every once in a while we catch a little thing that made it through the whole process that just slipped through the cracks, a misspelling of a company's name or something like that that we thought looked right, and then at the end she's like, nope, this isn't right, and she makes sure that we correct it before it goes out. So,
Terrific.
yeah, it's been really good. We, as I said, we've been able to just feel like we're really catching little things and cleaning things up. So.
Okay, all right. We'll move on to number 3, the Eagle Scout project update.
So at the April meeting, the library board reviewed the initial proposal for an Eagle Scout project to install a hammock garden. The board provided feedback, and since the meeting, the proposal has evolved and many of the questions have been addressed. The Eagle Scout candidate, Drew Salkowski, has provided a letter drawing and options for making the hammocks available for public use. In addition, library staff has contacted the school and the library's insurance company to discuss permission and liability coverage. At this time, the school has given preliminary permission, and the library's insurance company feels that we would be adequately covered, but we are discussing the best way to document the coverage of this project in writing within our policy to assure clarity. The proposed installation date, if approved, is July 29th through 30th of this year. So, and then money for the execution of this project is completely fundraised by our future Eagle Scout. I should call him a future Eagle Scout. He's not quite an Eagle Scout yet, but he's in the works for an Eagle Scout. Any questions about the project? He had somebody who helped him do a nice CAD drawing using the satellite overhead of the library that we had provided to him, showing the location where he would like to put it. He has I believe his father is a contractor and was able to make sure that everything that's in here in terms of how deep the poles are going to go and how everything is going to be secured.
That's nice.
Is professionally
Very nice.
done
I was impressed.
and clarified.
Yeah, kid.
And then we talked to him about the question that came up about how are we going to assure that it's safe and how are we going to make sure that the hammocks don't deteriorate over time. And we are looking at the possibility of having people check them out at the circulation desk, take them out and hook them up when they're done, just bring them back.
So that's still to be determined.
That's still to be determined, but that's the way we're leaning at this time. We don't want to say definitively that's how we're going to do it because we want to kind of see how it's going to go as we start to lay out the project.
So then it's just a storage issue.
And then it's a storage issue, exactly. So fortunately, they're little pouches.
Okay.
They roll up and they're like little camping hammocks, which is why we're worried about leaving them out year round because they're really not designed to take the weather like that. And then in terms of space, one of the questions we had talked about was, do we need a canopy over the top or something to create shade? And the location that we've selected is over near the pine trees down on this side, so that creates nice shade in that area. So that's kind of solved that problem. So.
Oh, it's not at the back of the lot, it's at the side?
It's at the back
It's
lot,
at
but
the
there's a
back.
whole
Oh,
bunch
okay,
of pine trees. We're kind of moving it down this, it was kind of in the middle, and we're kind of moving it to this side.
Oh,
So there's
okay.
some nice shade over there, and that's a good space for it. So.
What's the estimated timing of, if all goes well, for completion?
The weekend. They literally are going to put it in a weekend.
This weekend?
No, the 29th through 30th.
Oh, I missed that
date, yeah,
detail, thank you.
The July 29th through 30th is what he's hoping to do.
And there would be a total of 12 hammocks.
From
the drawing, it looks like. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Hadn't actually counted them from beginning to end, so we've gone through a couple of variations on this. So, yes. Any other questions? So technically, the final approval, because it is on school property, will come in terms of permission to actually install comes from the school. But the library is taking responsibility for it. So it really is up to the board if you're okay with this project. So I don't know if you want to make a motion potentially authorizing this project.
I make a motion to authorize the Eagle Scout project of hammocks on the library, at the back of the park, in the
I don't
vicinity
know
of
that
the
I would
library.
say where, I would say as
Yeah.
presented and leave it
As
at that.
presented, right. Because who owns the property goes back to the library.
Yeah.
As presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Eagle Scout project as presented. Any other questions or comments?
Did we select an option of how we were going to do the hammock distribution? It's going to be the checkout.
I think that's the direction that we're leaning toward, unless there's some glitch that we discover, in which case I would come back and let you know that that's the way we would, if there's some reason not to, but the circulation desk has already said, yeah, that seems like that will work for them. We're going to put little tags on them so we can kind of check them out to people, so we know who has them, so we make sure we get them back. They're this big, so we put them in a little bin up at the desk, so I think we've got the logistics of that kind of figured out. But if anything were to go awry, if we discover it doesn't work, we'll kind of let you know how we might do it differently. But we don't think leaving them out all the time is a good plan. So
Right.
we'd already decided that was sort of asking
Yeah.
for trouble.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried.
Thank you for your flexibility and support in this. Whenever we do an Eagle Scout project, they're a little bit fuzzy as we lay them out. It's not a...
It's a learning process.
It's a
It is-
learning experience.
It is a learning process and each student approaches it differently, so.
Well, and I think it's wonderful that he's doing it and
Yeah.
adding back to the community, so.
Well, and the school is very excited about it because, of course, it's a student doing the project, and so they've been very, very supportive. But they've kind of left us to kind of work out the logistics, and they've kind of decided that we're going to oversee it on their behalf, which is fine. So we don't mind doing that.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about EV charging station updates.
Okay, so just an update regarding the possible electronic vehicle charging station project. You've got some information in your packet. Nancy and I have been working on this. I am very grateful to Nancy and her expertise in utilities because I've learned a lot working on this with her. She's done a lot of the phone calls and legwork on the front end and has had some resources through DTE. She knows how to navigate their system much better than I do in terms of getting to talk to who she needs to talk to. But you can see from the breakdown that we've already spoken to Bowman. There was called to the township, so we know about what the permitting process looks like. They sort of figured that out when we called them because they hadn't really had anybody call them and ask about it yet. So we're a little bit of the, they're learning as they go as well. And we're one of the first ones to call and say, hey, do we need a permit for this? And they're like, yes, we think you do. So they're new to this project as well. DTE, there is a possibility potentially of a grant. We're not sure if we're eligible for it or not. We think we might be, so that could be a way to defray the cost of installation. We've also had a conversation with the City of the Village of Clarkston. They have already done this, and we have a basic understanding of how they've done their project. There are some things that they did that we could probably replicate. There are some things that they've done that we can't replicate because their situation is different than ours, but we can definitely learn from what they've done. And then we've started meeting with electricians. So far, we've met with Oak Electric. We will also be meeting with State Electric and Hutchinson's Electric to talk about how exactly to do this project if we were to go forward. And then the basic information about EV charging stations. We've learned a lot just sort of gathering the details about that. GM, Ford, and Chrysler have compatible charging, and it's considered level 2 charging. Some of the newer vehicles are up to level 3. Teslas are at level 3. It means that they charge at higher amperage and they charge faster. People who have a Tesla can charge on these other stations, but they have to have an adapter, and most Tesla owners have that adapter that they need. And then GM, Ford, and Chrysler have initiated talks with Tesla about developing universal charging. So we've got that sort of in the backs of our minds, that how quickly do we want to move forward on this? Is there a possibility that we would put in a charging station like this and then suddenly it changes? And so we're proceeding with caution, but we are learning as we go. And then some big questions that we still need to talk about. Does the library have adequate electric in the parking lot? How much would installation and possible electrical upgrades cost? Who would assume the responsibility for maintenance of the EV charger, and who will manage the payments for electricity at charging stations? And that has to do with the fact that we can't just provide free electricity for people to charge their cars. So there needs to be some way that they can pay for it, and these charging stations are designed to do that. But somebody has to manage it and then pay DTE, because DTE is not going to collect that money. It collects using an app, and then we would need to make sure that it gets paid out. So our initial conversations would indicate that we probably want a separate line for the EV charging stations and a separate meter, separate from what the library building has. And so we've been investigating that. So this is all very investigative at this point. We're not making a suggestion of moving forward, but we're learning as we go, trying to open our minds to the possibility that this is something that we would need to address going forward, and sort of how to address that. I've also talked to some other libraries who have done it, and they have provided warnings that installation, depending on how you go about it, can be expensive, and trying to find some way to supplement that or fund that or subsidize it in some way is needed. So.
I would imagine there are grants beyond the ones you've mentioned here that are available. The other thing that is sort of on my mind for questions for future thinking is one is the popularity of electric vehicles increases, how easy is it to expand? Maybe once you put the line in, not difficult at all, but I think it's a good thing to know.
Yeah.
And second is charging technology improves, and it's sure to changing out the stations.
Yep.
And what's the cost associated with that? Who would bear it? We don't want to be left with the generous donation from Bowman in the first place, but then we have the cost of removing them because they're out of date and irrelevant
Absolutely.
to the market, et cetera.
And we actually had a meeting this morning, and I wrote this on Friday, put it in the board packet, because we had a meeting last week, and then this morning's meeting, we learned a whole bunch more. And one of the things that we learned is that's when we discovered that probably the best thing to do is to bring in a separate power line, a separate meter, and bring it right from the pole, that it would probably have its own transformer. And the location that we marked, that we had talked about with Bowman, we're like, oh, this looks like a good spot. He suggested that we put them along the west side of the parking lot. We would be going right into the ground, and if we needed to expand, we would go right down that aisle, and we would not be disturbing any of the asphalt in the parking lot itself. We could just go
along the yard.
along the
Sounds
side.
good.
So,
At the expense of the asphalt.
And then the electrician that we talked to today also had talked about, asked some questions about solar panels and other kinds of things, and got us thinking about a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So it was really a good meeting this morning.
It's going to be a rapidly evolving industry in the next 10 years.
It is, but we felt like we needed to at least start the conversation and try to learn as much as we could going.
It's great.
Yeah.
What public libraries, what local public libraries have already instituted this?
They have, the ones that I've talked to haven't done the installations yet. They're
just talking
further
about it.
along than we are. Most of them are attached to municipalities.
Okay.
So some of the larger libraries that are doing it as part of their governmental entity, and it's the municipality that's doing it. And they have a little bit different situation because there are some additional opportunities for them that as a district library that we don't have. They're piggybacking on their DPW and some of those kinds of things. I haven't reached out to the DPW yet to see if there's anything that they could help us with, but that's on my list of things as we get a little bit further through the conversations.
But nobody's done it just yet. That's what I was wondering.
Well,
Has anybody done it?
the ones that have done it have gotten them through their municipalities and then discovered how expensive it was.
Yeah.
So I haven't spoken to the libraries that have actually installed any so far. Everyone that I've spoken to is in the investigative stage, but they're further along and they're like, wow, this is really expensive. You might want to move slowly. So,
That's good, thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate the ability to
Yes.
discuss within the field.
Yes, and so much of it has to do with where you're getting your power from.
Sure.
We're very fortunate because our power literally is right on the pole out here, and the electrician we talked to today said, wow, that's convenient. So he thought that we might have a little bit easier time, but that doesn't mean that it isn't still going to be expensive, so.
Be aware the village has 3, 2 in the parking lot next to the city-county building, 1 in the other parking lot. and because I disagree with their policy, they are charging to park and charging to use this EV charger, both. So if you park there, you get charged twice.
Oh, interesting.
And of course, if you're paying a fee, a charging fee based on the length of time that you're charging,
Yes.
that's going to impact things also.
Yeah.
Does it already exist in?
The units are in. I was there last week, and they were having an issue with the amperage. And so they're having to put in a transformer, which is something we learned to ask about. And so, they've kind of had a bit of a setback, but the units and everything are already in.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and they're already charging to park. So,
Interesting.
So this is 2 spots that are actually closer to the entrance.
Well,
I thought they were on the side.
Yep, so we were looking at those spots thinking that we might be able to run off of, there's a light pole there.
Oh,
And we
okay.
figured we could tap into the power there, and the electrician that came today said, oh no, that the conduit that goes to that pole is not going to be big enough for us to run the power through. But see, those are the things we didn't know until we actually
Okay,
sat down with the
I see.
electrician. The electrician's like, nope, I can almost guarantee you that that conduit is not going to be big enough.
So is he suggesting the west side of the property?
Yep, so
you
what
said?
he is
Okay.
suggesting is that if you look at the west side of the property where it curves
Yeah.
right here, the pole right here is where the power comes into the building.
So he's suggesting.
So he's suggesting that we run it diagonally across
Yeah,
the yard.
okay. All right.
And, yep, and that we would put along this,
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
along the west side of the parking lot, yeah. But we didn't even realize that was a possibility. We were just looking for because there's no electricity in that part of the yard. But he's correct. If you're running it off of the power pole, that absolutely is a smart place to go.
Okay.
So
Terrific,
that's
thank
why you talk to an expert.
Several times.
Several times, yes. And we will be talking to multiple electricians and getting different electricians' takes on how to
Great. I'll be
think about this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, number 5, a topic we address frequently, our fire alarm system.
It's a building full of paper. So last year, we began the process of replacing the library's fire alarm system that is original to the building. To execute this process, we worked with Independence Township Fire Marshal and Fire Inspector to request quotes. We received proposals from Johnson Controls, National Time and Signal, IQ Life Safety Systems, Red Guard Fire and Security, and Quality Fire Services. We narrowed the field to our top 3 based on the completeness of the proposal and price. And because the quotes were so similar, we asked these 3 contractors to propose a plan to address current issues with the system in 2022, leading up to a complete replacement of the system in 2023. Of the 3 proposals, we looked at the company that provided the best strategic replacement of the system as a 2-part process. IQ Life Safety System was recommended, approved by the board, and we started with the upgrades of the monitoring system in 2022. We will now execute the complete replacement of the system, keeping in mind that the availability of parts and equipment can change. We asked IQ to update the quote to replace the system to ensure that they would still be able to execute the project as originally presented and approved by the board in 2022. The original quote was actually $35,800, and the new quote is $33,964.16. Some of the brands have changed, but the equipment to be installed is the same. The decrease in price is attributed to a discount that was not available at the time of the original quote. And so we're recommending the approval of the IQ Life Safety Systems proposal as presented. This is actually a budgeted project. There is plenty of money in the budget to execute this. So we're not concerned about that part at all. We're prepared for it.
Decrease was a nice surprise.
Yeah, it's nice. I was a little bit concerned. I did actually budget a cushion, anticipating that by the time we got to the project, that it would go up, and it did not. I'm pretty excited about that, actually. That was a nice, happy discovery. Yeah. But I also wanted to assure that, because it was happening so much later, that you had a chance to relook at the quote. I did talk to. So the person who was the fire inspector when we did this, the fire marshal retired. The fire inspector at the time is now the fire marshal, and they're hiring a new fire inspector. Mm-hmm. So the fire inspector, who is now the fire marshal, is fully aware of this. I've spoken to him, and I asked him, do you need to see this again? He said, nope, I already looked at it. I think it looks great. It's fine. The point at which You approve the project. IQ Life Safety will then draw up their plan, and they will submit that to the fire marshal for approval. And that is how the permitting process begins. So,
Okay.
Once that's provided, is the review process 2 weeks, a month?
at this point, I don't really know, but I will give you an update next month and let you know for sure. I don't know how many of them they have on their plate. I don't know how quickly they will execute the actual, I'm assuming they'll be able to execute it pretty quickly because they were able to turn this quote around literally. I said, well, let's do a fresh quote, and I got it the very next day. So they're ready to execute the project. It's a fair amount of construction, and basically what we're doing, just to kind of get everybody up to speed, you can see one of the little fire light alarms up there on the wall. Notice where it is. It's actually pretty low. They're like that throughout the building. That was up to code in 1992 when the building was built. But now the problem is, because we have such high shelving, that if you were in the stacks selecting books, for example, if you were hard of hearing or something along those lines, you would not necessarily hear those, because there's sort of a blocking wall around you, insulation of books and things like that. So now they go into the ceiling, and there need to be more of them because of the size of the building. And so the proposal that is here is up to current codes, obviously. And so all of those will come out, and new ones will go into the ceiling throughout the building. So that's the work we're doing, which means they're going to take out every single one of those and put in the new ones.
Repainting.
And there will be repainting and, yes,
Replastering.
fixing walls, and so it's a construction project.
Yeah.
It is
So-
truly a construction project.
Should we assume the project could be completed by year end?
They seem to think that it will, so I'm taking their word for it. They seem to think that they know how long it's going to take. To me, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work, but obviously they'll bring in, and they're not going to try not to draw it out over the course of a long time. So.
Well, it would be nice to have it completed, and we had at least one quarter without this on our
Agenda.
Yes. Be novel.
Yeah, we
Well,
don't know
and-
what to do all the time.
And this is the alarm system, the fire suppression system. We're still going to get to talk about that on a regular basis. So you won't be missing talking about the possibility of preventing fire in the library. We know that everybody loves talking about that. And I made the mistake, as the past board members know, of reading the library book, which is a story about the Los Angeles fire back in the 1980s. And it was a perfect storm of a fire in which it burned so hot that the steel shelving melted. And the building was closed for 7 years, and they lost like 500,000 books out of their library. So horrific to be reading that. And what possessed me to read it as we're going through this whole original process, but my timing was not
We
good.
don't want to hear about fire.
Nope,
We don't
nope,
want to
nope.
hear about water
No.
on our
So,
printed materials.
yes.
All right, I'll accept a motion.
I make a motion to accept the proposal from IQ Life Safety Systems as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposal for IQ Life Safety Systems as presented to review our fire alarm system. Any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Number 6.
Okay. So the library property includes many trees, quite a few of which are gifts in memory of community members. Properly maintaining all of the trees is an important task that has been difficult the last few years as contractors struggled to have enough workers. We are careful to select a company that focuses on tree care as opposed to tree removal and employs an arborist, so we know that the trees are being groomed properly. Our most recent tree care company, the Tree Barber, has retired, so this year we approached 2 trusted companies for quotes. Owen Tree Service is a company we have used in the past and is also used by some neighboring communities. Dawson Tree Care has been in the area for many years and is also a trusted local business. Each company was given a list of tasks that needed to be executed and invited to recommend additional work the arborist felt should be considered. If you look at the bottom line, it would appear that Dawson Tree Care has the lower price, but upon closer inspection, please note that Owen Tree Service quoted the requested task list at $4,815 and included the removal of 3 dead spruce trees on the west side of the building. The total cost of $6,815, while $515 more than Dawson's quote, includes a significant additional project that does indeed need to be done. And so this is from Arlene Weber, our facilities coordinator, and she's recommending that the board approve the quote from Owen Tree Service as presented. This is actually a budgeted item. This quote includes some additional work that was not planned, but there is money included in the building and grounds maintenance budget to cover additional unexpected maintenance like this, and she can cover the cost with that. So she would like to do the entire project.
Yes. Those trees do need to be removed.
They need to be removed. They are dead trees. And, but the task list includes the beautiful crab apples that are up at the driveway. It includes lifting up the locust trees that are along the north side of the property so that it's easier to get under them for mowing. It includes grooming the linden trees that are in the island, as well as the katsura trees at the entrance, and all of those little crab apples that are all memorial trees throughout the property. They'll be cleaning up all of those as well. So
Everybody gets a haircut.
everybody gets a haircut. Yep, shaving a haircut.
Are there any questions? Both bids are there in front of us. If not, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the Owen Tree Service proposal as presented.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposal from Owen Tree Service for care of our trees as presented. If there are no comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Thank you. And now I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. We're adjourned at 7:32.
Good meeting.
Good meeting, because we did a lot of work.
Yeah, covered a lot of ground. You had us really prepared. Thanks, Julie.
I'm getting pretty good at hitting that hour mark.